On the morning of April 26, 1986, the people of Pripyat were going about their usual Saturday routines, unaware of the catastrophic accident that had occurred at the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The Soviet authorities, determined to control information, had imposed a strict silence, cutting telephone lines and preventing anyone from leaving the city. To maintain the illusion of invincibility, the government sought to downplay the disaster, both to its citizens and the outside world. However, whispers of radiation exposure soon spread as plant workers returned home and spoke to their families. The KGB acted swiftly, enforcing secrecy and punishing those who attempted to reveal the truth, ensuring panic, essentially the public learning the reality, was avoided. In Moscow, over 400 miles away, the report on the accident reached Mikhail Gorbachev. Despite his promises of transparency and reform under Glasnost, the report understated the disaster, claiming the radiation levels were manageable and that the fire had been mostly contained. Yet, the scale of the catastrophe made concealment impossible. Even in Minsk, 200 miles from Chernobyl, radiation levels were detected, prompting immediate precautions such as keeping windows closed and cleaning shoes. Life, however, largely continued as usual, until a day and a half later, when the residents of Pripyat were finally evacuated. They were given just an hour to collect essentials before buses transported the entire city's population away from the radiation zone. But by then, significant exposure had already occurred. To contain the reactor fire, military helicopters were deployed to drop sand, boron, and lead directly into the core, a perilous operation exposing pilots to lethal radiation doses. Meanwhile, Sweden detected radioactive contamination from Chernobyl, revealing that the accident could no longer be hidden. Within days, a partial evacuation zone was established, though thousands more would be affected by fallout, particularly in Belarus. International assistance arrived, including Dr. Robert Gale from the University of California, who helped treat radiation victims at Hospital No. 6 in Moscow using experimental bone marrow therapies. As the cleanup continued, thousands of workers, known as liquidators, were drafted from across the Soviet Union. They faced extremely high radiation levels while decontaminating buildings, removing contaminated soil, and even culling radioactive livestock. Helicopter pilots and ground teams risked their lives to stabilize the reactor, with the work often exceeding safe exposure limits. The damaged reactor was eventually enclosed in a makeshift sarcophagus constructed from prefabricated concrete and steel, marking a temporary solution to prevent further radiation leakage. In the following months, the Soviet government conducted a trial of plant officials, including Anatoly Dyatlov and chief engineer Nikolai Fomin. Although design flaws in the reactor were largely responsible for the disaster, the trial pinned blame on individuals to maintain the system's image. The disaster had far-reaching consequences, fueling independence movements in Ukraine as citizens demanded transparency about the fallout and its effects. Many liquidators and local residents suffered long-term health effects, particularly thyroid cancers in children exposed to radioactive iodine. While the official death toll remained low, estimates suggest that thousands more may have died from radiation-related illnesses in the years that followed. Decades later, the original sarcophagus had begun to corrode, prompting the construction of the new safe confinement, a massive steel arch designed to contain the reactor for the next century. Yet even today, Chernobyl remains a site of concern. During Russia's invasion of Ukraine, military activity in the exclusion zone raised fears of renewed radioactive dust exposure, highlighting the lingering dangers of the world's worst nuclear accident. The story of Chernobyl is not only one of human error and environmental disaster, but also of immense bravery, as ordinary people risked their lives to contain the fallout and protect future generations.